podcast out there. Ain't no one doing it better. Debating, film study, documentaries, we do it all. Name another channel that can do that. Acknowledge us. Love us to this. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, we killing them. Don't matter. Only place you can come and debate. Ain't gotta be worried about getting kicked out. And go one-on-one, mano a mano, with the great one. Oh yeah. Be ready for it. Love us to this. Anybody that wanna come get it, you can come get it. We welcome all debate. Crawford lovers, Haney lovers, Javante Davis lovers, Canelo lovers. Doesn't matter. We welcome it. Live streams every 4. Discord, come get it. Y'all boys ain't ready. AM Sports Media, where legends are born. So are y'all ready? I'm ready. Let's get the show started. Acknowledge us, bruh. Acknowledge us. We told y'all boys, love us to this. AM Sports Media, acknowledge us. #1 boxing podcast out there. Ain't no one doing it better. Debating, film study, documentaries, we do it all. Name another channel that can do that. Acknowledge us. Love us to this. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, we killing them. Don't matter. Only place you can come and debate. Ain't gotta be worried about getting kicked out. And go one-on-one, mano a mano, with the great one.
Welcome back to the Angry Man Podcast with Jason and Greg. I need to pause for a minute because I'm seem to be having some technical issues. Can you all hear me? Because my audio seems to be effing up. Let me know if you can hear me in the comment section. Can you hear me? Okay, I can be heard. So I don't know why, I'm struggling to hear anything from this computer, this laptop that I'm using. So my apologies. I don't know what's going on with that. We'll see if we can get other people on here shortly. But what's going on, everybody? You know what it is. It's some call it Furious Fridays. I call it Friday Rant. But it's a show that I'm trying to do most Fridays, as many Fridays as I can, to talk about, what's currently on my mind. And man, what look like is my video kind of grainy? Let me know if my video grainy. Good. Yeah. Let me see if I can make an adjustment here. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Boy, got some things on here, man. Yeah. It's always a little harder when I'm remote. That's why I was a little hesitant about doing it, but we'll see. You should be able to hear me now, right? I'm assuming everybody can now hear me and my video should be better. All right, let's go. So y'all see what I got in my cup. You know it's bourbon. Bourbon Friday, bourbon Wednesday, bourbon Fridays, and bourbon Sundays. But I did want to get together and talk a little bit about the current situation that's going on with Brian Norman Jr. We did a video yesterday and talked a little bit about this. And I do want to invite my boy on the boxing source. Definitely want to have him jump on here and chop it up with me and talk a little bit about this. So I'm gonna send you the link right now, fam. The link is in the comment section where you and I were talking a little bit today about this, and I'm gonna start it off. So I've seen so much stuff around here talking about Brian Norman Jr. ducking, Jaron Ennis ducking. Jaron Ennis was never this, and people are trying to tie this stuff back into like Terrence Crawford. Man, these Terrence Crawford fanatics are wild, dog. They are wild. Like they still going back to like a few years ago about Terrence Crawford and him fighting, and Jaron Ennis being offered a fight with Terrence Crawford, which none of it's true. And when you ask certain questions, they get quiet or change the subject. But I've been hearing a lot of talk about Brian Norman Jr. ducking and Jaron Ennis ducking, and they're offering Brian Norman 5 times the amount of money that he wanted, and or 5 times the amount of money that he's made in the past. And my challenge with that is this, and I brought this to the attention of my good friend Jay, who follows the channel and is in the Discord. Shout out to Jay. No two cent has nothing to do with him yet. We constantly hear about him. What's going on, man? Oh shit, I can't hear you. Hold on.
Yeah. Now you should hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you now. What's going on, man?
Yo,
so yeah, I was just kicking it off, and these boys have been talking about Brian Norman Jr. ducking, Boots ducking, they've tied this all the way back to Terrence Crawford. Some folks amazingly so. The Terrence Crawford sycophants. And my thing is this, and I was talking to my guy Jay that was in the Discord, and I mentioned to him because he's talking about Brian Norman Jr. is ducking, and I said because he's being offered 5 times the amount, and I explained to him. I said, hey, listen, he works in investments. Say if you were going to an investment firm, there was another investment firm that wanted to bring you on, but their healthcare was 50% higher than your current employee or employer, and they wanted you to move out to, let's say, California, where the cost of living is 20% higher than where you currently live. But the role is more complex and challenging. Would you agree that you're being someone who is ducking that opportunity, that challenge, that complexity, because you are asking for a higher amount of money in order to make that happen? And of course, he never answered that question. He went right back into something different. I know you've done an article on this subject. You've covered it. I think you got some sources. So I wanted to bring you on to talk about it a little bit. But for me personally, I find it absurd to say that, Brian Norman Jr. is ducking. I find it absurd to say that Jaron Ennis is somehow ducking. I think this is a situation where I personally feel, you tell me if you see it differently, but I personally feel that Jaron Ennis is a risk, right? Brian Norman, whatever it was that Brian Norman made in the past, that's irrelevant because in the past, Brian Norman wasn't a champion, okay? And now we're asking Brian Norman as a champion to face another champion who is a dangerous opponent and who could potentially derail his career. Not only that, they don't want him to fight with his natural platform and his promoter. They want him to come over there and fight on Matchroom. So all of these things are going to create expenses associated with this fight. And Brian Norman wants to walk away with a certain amount of dollars in his pocket. When you think about the current situation that Jaron Ennis is in, where Karen is his mandatory, no one wants to see that fight. So Jaron Ennis is in a bit of a predicament, right? Now, I did see somewhere where they said Eddie Hearn said that he would either look to make that fight or possibly move up to 154. So he got options, but, I see Brian Norman and his team trying to leverage where they see their value and also trying to leverage the current situation that they see Jaron Ennis in. And I don't see anything wrong with that. They're not going to get as much as Jaron Ennis, but I don't see either situation as a duck. So what's your thoughts on that?
Now, the key term that you said there is leverage.
Yep.
And that's the thing that's, kind of like being used in this particular sense when it comes to Brian Norman Jr. and his camp in reference to, trying to get a potential fight with Jaron Ennis in the unification.
Yeah.
Now, from a timing perspective, there, of course, we've already had Jaron Boop Ennis have his first title defense of the IBF title there against David Avangian in Philadelphia in July. A couple of months earlier, you had Brian Norman Jr. involved in a fight with Giovanni Santillan for the WBO interim title.
Yep.
And this was in Santillan's hometown. Now, to put that in perspective, from a matchmaking standpoint, it looked like they were positioning Brian Norman to be basically, as we say, food for Giovanni Santillan. And that's how they set that fight up. Now, since we see that Brian Norman was able to win that fight, now it's like, okay, what do we do with Brian Norman? Now, this is before he was elevated to the full WBO title, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the thing about it is like, okay, you have him as a WBO champion. Now, what do we do in order to position him to get, either a title defense or a title unification? So now enter in Boop Ennis, right? He's an IBF champion. He's looking to unify. He's, been going to try to make fights with Mario Barrios, Iamana Stanionis, and then now you enter in Brian Norman. So when they say Brian Norman as a potential opponent, then they, say, hey, we're interested. We want to see if we can make a unification fight. So they're like, Norman's team was like saying, okay, well, what are you, willing to do for that? And that's when, you have those initial offers being submitted. Okay. First offer was there. North of $1 million, didn't necessarily work. So they upped it again by about, 250K or so. So it'd be around 1.25, 1.3.
Yep.
And they said pretty much no. Now, according to Brian Norman Sr., the last offer that they were sent was 1.7 million. I've heard that it was 1.8 million. Okay. Now the hangup is that, okay, you have the thing there at 1.8. Okay. And you kind of like explained this earlier with, Brian Norman being with Top Rank, that, they're going to send their guy off to another promotional company to have a fight. They want to have a percentage. Now, what's interesting is, for a while, the report was that Top Rank was going to get 20%. What I recently saw Brian Norman Sr. say, it would be 25%, which is interesting. That's number one. But the thing is that, from what I heard, like 1.8 million, that's kind of up there. Particularly for a fighter in Brian Norman, who just had acquired the WBO title, hadn't really had much notoriety or much momentum, in comparison to a Boots Ennis, who whether IBF champion or not, a number of fight fans had already known about Boots Ennis, being IBF mandatory for a while, then being able to be elevated to IBF champion. So people know about Boots, so definitely know about Boots. So my thing is like, okay, if you're asking for more than 1.8, then what do you expect them to try to get for you? And it almost seems like, coming from, let's say I'm coming from a fan's perspective, it almost seeming like they're having it as them trying to sell off the belt. That's one. Now, the other thing is that I reported, or at least I posted an article on the Boxing Source, and this comes from Dan Rayfield of Fight Freaks Unite. He posted on his Twitter or X account that Brian Norman Jr. is going to be part of the fight card November 8th in Norfolk, Virginia, against Derek Cuevas. So with me seeing that, that kind of like has me of the thinking of one particular thing. And, I see patterns. So that's almost like a movement towards, were they serious at it right then and there, or did they already have something in place, whether it's insurance policy or not? But to have a report come out there soon after everything had pretty much fallen apart between Jaron Ennis and Brian Norman Jr., then you put that out there, then I'm like, well, were you really interested in having that particular fight right now? Or is it something to where you're trying to build the name for Brian Norman to kind of like get to that point where if you do ask for that amount, you're pretty much like, it's pretty much worth it to have that?
Yeah, so I think that's a fair point. Like every point that you made was fair. I'm of the mindset that the fight shouldn't happen for another 24 to 18. For another 12 to 18 months. You know what I mean? Because I think there's an opportunity there, and I know people they get upset with the whole quote unquote marinating fights. But at the end of the day, certain fights do need to marinate. You're talking about two undefeated fighters currently at 147 pounds, who both have exciting fighting styles. I think there's an opportunity to further promote that fight and make it bigger than what it needs to be. Now, I still would say, and I understand this from their perspective, if I'm looking at this and I'm quantifying the risk, the belt that I'm bringing, the risk associated with the fight, historically what other individuals have made with the same credentials, what needs to be the amount that I make in order for this to make sense for me, I can respect that. Um, and I can respect it more so in this regard, because like when we ask for stuff that's like astronomically outrageous, that's one thing, right? You know, but if they offered up to 1.8 and they're currently, and this is where I want to get your thoughts on this, they offered up to 1.8, and currently Matchroom and Top Rank have a partnership with the number one zaddy in the sport, Turki Alalshikh. Then how is it that they can't come up with an extra 700 to pay the guy to make the biggest and best fight, certainly the best opponent that Jaron Ennis has ever faced? And again, I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. I don't believe this has anything to do with Jaron Ennis. I don't necessarily think this has anything to do with Brian Norman Jr. I think this is about Eddie Hearns not wanting to pay a certain amount of money. I think both fighters want to fight. I just think Eddie doesn't want to pay the money for whatever reason. And hell, man, we could even make why couldn't this be a part of some Riyadh co-main? They're about to pay Shakur Stevenson $5 million. He ain't worth that.
Well, that last part is the key thing, because we know that, you know, Eddie has been involved with Turki Alalshikh for a while now, right? But the card, like for example, the card over in Wells Fargo Center, that Boots versus Avanesian, that, you know, wasn't necessarily a Turkey, you know, involved event, right?
I agree.
And so in this particular case here, that might be the same situation, in that you wouldn't necessarily have, you know, Turkey or Riyadh season pasted onto the mat in this particular case. So it's like, are you going to go ahead and say, hey, are we putting this bout on for a certain amount of money for both fighters, right? So if I said that, you know, it was reported that, you know, they would go as high as 1.8 for Brian Norman. So you would so just imagine like how much it would be for Jaron Boots Ennis, because he's the A side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, you're gonna have this unification fight, and who's gonna pick it up? The Zone pay-per-view. Do you feel like if you're Matchroom and you're the Zone, that you would put out that much money for a pay-per-view event and think you would be able to get the returns on that? And that's where that goes. Now, I know you know brought up that example there of Shakur Stevenson, and yes, he's getting up to $5 million to face Joe Cordina in that Riyadh season event coming up on October 12th. But you know, here in this instance, this is not, you know, something where it's part of a Riyadh season. You know, they have the date. They had the date set November 9th, Wells Fargo Center. It was an open date there over at the venue. The Sixers aren't going to be playing over there. They're pretty much going to be in the West Coast. So they had everything set, everything in line to, you know, make the fight happen. It was just a matter of like how much money that, you know, Brian Norman Jr. and this party wanted for this.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Makes sense to me. I'm still of the mindset, though, that with the relationship that Eddie Hearns has, I feel like that's the sole reason why any of these entities currently have a relationship or a partnership with Turki Alalshikh, so that they can finance fights that individually they wouldn't be able to finance on their own. So that's where, for me, it's unclear why this gap can't be bridged.
Okay,
but
so I'll bring in another example then.
Yep.
Now, this was kind of separate on it, but you know, they say indirectly Turkey was involved with it, right? Virgil Ortiz versus Surrey Boachuk. That ended up being on, what was that? No, August the 10th, right? But it was supposed to be part of that fight card over in California on August 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
But they ended up rejecting it because they didn't feel like it would have been good enough to be part of that card. This could be another example. Boots versus Norman, if they don't feel like it's something that they want to have as part of like a Riyadh season event, then they ain't gonna really invest in it. So in this particular sense, it's not like what Turki Alalshikh is fully financing matchroom boxing in this case. So I think this is completely separate from that.
Okay. Hey, I got a couple of things in the chat that I want to address here real quick because there's some ninjas about to piss me off. ASVP TV talking about, is Greg trying to get Turkey involved? He your zaddy? Not no, Ninja. He's your zaddy. He's the zaddy that you've been speaking to. He's the one that you guys have been telling me in the Discord over and over and over again that he is here to rescue and save the sport. That Turki Alalshikh gets what he wants. That he has unlimited resources and funds. So if that's the case, he's your zaddy, and I'm just using your logic, sucker. And finally, the phenomenal show, $5. Appreciate you, fam. Shakur is not getting $5 million. Eddie Hearns confirmed it today. I'm talking to Fight Hub TV. Sorry, my guys, I've been out of the mix a little bit today. We're trying to work remotely, so I have not seen any videos related to boxing today. But let me go off on a tangent, fam, Ja. This Turki Alalshikh situation, man. You know, I was just having a interesting conversation today with someone who will remain nameless, and the conversation of Turki Alalshikh came up, and this individual, I mean, he has, how should I describe him? He's definitely in the sport. I'm talking about professionally in the sport, right? Mm-hmm. Like connected in the sport. Mm-hmm. And in this conversation, we were talking about just Turki Alalshikh and his overall impact on the game. And one thing that I mentioned was the fact that I think a lot of people misunderstand what Turki Alalshikh actually is. You know, Tim Bradley came on the show last week. Shout out to Tim Bradley. But he made the comment about Turki Alalshikh saying that, you know, he has unlimited resources. It's that oil money. And the way that he described it, it almost sounded like he believed that it was Turkey's money. But in reality, it's Saudi Arabia's money. Mm-hmm. And my understanding, based off of just things that I've read about Turki Alalshikh, and this individual had the same understanding, was that Turki Alalshikh is basically involved with entertainment and trying to expand the reach and the presence of Saudi Arabia in things other than oil, which means he has a finite amount of money that he has to use in these areas, and that in actuality, he actually has to turn a profit. He has to turn a profit. This is not a situation where he can just lose money. He can't just throw money at the situation.
Right.
And this person, again, who I'm telling you all, like I said, they will remain nameless, but this person is well connected in boxing. I'm talking about it. He's well connected. So I think what people believe Turki Alalshikh is false. That's number one. Not to say that he's not, you know, someone that has resources. He certainly does. He has resources at his disposal, but he is not a billionaire. And he's not someone that has unlimited resources where he can just continue to lose money. What's your thoughts on that? And I'm not telling you what my source is, ASVP TV. Why would I do that?
That's not what, you know, we basically do here, unless, you know, we get something that's directly from the person that they're going to say it, like right then and there. But yeah, on that front, this is, you know, well, boxing is one sport that Saudi Arabia has been involved with. You know, they've been involved with Live Golf. They've been involved with soccer. Probably, you know, a few other sports as is. But, you know, boxing, at least to me, is like the third sport that Saudi Arabia has been involved with. And the thing there with Turki Alalshikh is that, you know, as you said, he's involved with the entertainment division there in Saudi Arabia. So they give him, you know, a specific budget, I guess, per year to, you know, run the thing there with Riyadh season. And, you know, the boxing is part of the entertainment with Riyadh season. They have concerts. They, you know, might have, you know, like I said, soccer, golf, maybe tennis. I think they've had tennis involved with Riyadh season as well. So this is just part of that. Now the thing is like with the budget, he's able to try to come up with more and more boxing events as the year goes along. But as you said, the event with Fury and Usyk. You know, we talked about the event there with Crawford Majumov over in Los Angeles, and the gate receipts for that, and the pay-per-view numbers for that. So it's like, okay, how much more will they be able to allow Turki Alalshikh to operate there with him, not being able to turn a profit? So we got to see what happens here with the event coming up in September with the Joshua Dubois, the Bivol Beterbiev with that Shakur Stevenson fight there against Joe Cordina. They got another event that they say is coming up in November that's involving a number of fighters from Golden Boy, and they're gonna have another event in December. So we got to see how those 4 events there, how they're gonna turn out, and we look into 2025 and see what they got in store for 2025.
Let me ask you: do you believe that at any point? Do you believe at any point it is possible? Because we've seen Turki Alalshikh align himself with Eddie Hearn. He is aligned with Top Rank. He's aligned with Golden Boy Promotions. When I think about, like, if he wants to get into a market outside of the U.S. in terms of boxing, Eddie Hearn makes sense for UK boxing, right? Eddie Hearn does not make sense for breaking into the United States. He has not made a star in the United States at all. And that's something that we mentioned about Boots. I love Boots. And Boots, in terms of wanting to be active, that made sense because for whatever reason, and I think it's mostly due with just the overall transition from Showtime to Amazon, PBC hasn't put on the number of cars that we would like for them to put on. And I think it's also, too, just because they were only tied to one distribution, which it sounds like they're working on more distribution. But if you Turki Alalshikh, who should you be hitching your wagon to if you're trying to break into the U.S. market? It's certainly not Eddie Hearn. Like, Eddie Hearns is not on this quote-unquote U.S. takeover. I just don't see it, man. What's your thoughts on that?
For me, it's just looking like Turkey is more of like a financier, almost like how a network would be. Like if you have, for example, like ESPN or Showtime before Amazon Prime, or like HBO, back in the days. It's like, okay, if you want to have boxing involved or be part of your sports entertainment portion of your network, when it comes to like Showtime, HBO, then yeah, you would include boxing in it. So with Turki Alalshikh, like I said, it's more of like an entertainment thing. And if he's saying, listen, I want to invest this amount of money, to provide this entertainment for the public, and let's see what fights can be made in this particular sense. So, like I said, he's been involved with Matchroom. He's been involved with Queensberry Promotions. He's had, a few fighters that have come over from Top Rank. He's had, fighters going to be involved with for Golden Boy, and a couple of fighters that have, been part of Heyman Boxing or TGB Promotions. So it's more about him kind of like investing in something and see if he can get returns out of it. So whether it's a Riyadh season event or whatever, if he feels like he wants to be involved in, he'll see what he can do. That's why, one of the stories there with Turki Alalshikh is him trying to lure Canelo Alvarez to be, part of his events there with Riyadh season. And as of right now, Canelo is not necessarily interested.
Where does he exactly? Let me ask you this, and before I go there, I do want to give a shout out to Andre Noble, $2. Somebody ducking is getting old for real. Come on, man. I tell you, Brian Loma Jr. ain't ducking, and Jaron Ennis ain't ducking now. I'm gonna tell you that. I don't believe that. Um, you made a good point earlier. AJ versus Dubois. We'll see how that performs. Where does he go from here? Because I mean, you have an affiliation with Top Rank. Top Rank, the rumor has been out there for a while that their ESPN contract is about to come to an end. The cards that Top Rank have put on have not been very good. Matchroom's cards have been okay, I guess. Um, where does he go from here, Turki Alalshikh? I mean, the one thing that he was looking for, that he really needed to land, believe it or not, was Canelo Alvarez, because that is what he had promised Terrence Crawford. And he decided that, in his infinite wisdom, that he could not only try to go head to head with Canelo, which we did a video about earlier this week. I think it's up to almost 7,000 views or something like that. But he also decided that he was going to insult Canelo for whatever reason. So this gentleman is here to help the sport, but he's also trying to compete with the sport, particularly with a guy that he actually needs to help to continue to generate momentum. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's fairly interesting there in reference to Turkey's comments about Canelo Alvarez. And the thing is, like, Canelo has been the long-standing leader as far as like the popularity contest, so to speak, in the sport of boxing. And you want to, if you want to try to lure someone like Canelo, you wouldn't have something to where you would try to insult him in a sense like that. I don't think that doesn't necessarily work. Not if you're trying to get a fight, with Canelo Alvarez, or if you're trying to sign Canelo Alvarez. Like, the thing is, you don't want to go ahead and insult him or badmouth him or anything like that. Like, he's not going to play that game with you. So with that being said, for Turkey moving forward, if he wants to go ahead and kind of like make more of an impact in the sport of boxing and give these quote unquote fights that fans want to see, then you want to go ahead and try to make those particular moves to try to make those fights happen. Whether it's Canelo versus a Crawford, or Canelo versus a Benavidez, or maybe Boots versus Crawford, or even Boots versus Virgil Ortiz there at 154. You want to see if you could try to make that effort to make those particular fights, and going ahead and trying to insult a fighter in a sense, that just won't necessarily work if you're trying to work with them in the near future.
Totally agree with that. So I just dropped the link to the show for anybody that wants to join in and talk about these topics here. But before I move on, let me see how many people we got in the building. We got 106 people in the building, but only 35 likes. Come on, guys, smash the like button. If I don't have my soundboard here, so I can't hit y'all with the smash the like button thing that I use. But I'm gonna need y'all to go ahead and smash that like button so other people can find this content. If you're new to the channel, this is the Angry Man Podcast and Sports Media, where we're always dropping boxing related content. So make sure you become a subscriber. And if you're a subscriber, think about becoming a member. $2.99 a month. It helps Jason and I bring you all this great content that we're currently bringing to you all. We are independent. We're not like some of these other boxing channels that are approaching. Oh, wow, man. JR, it's crazy, man. We are at a little over 2 years, man. I think 2 years and maybe 3 months, and we are almost at 18,000 subscribers. I don't think people understand. I know you do, but I don't think people understand how challenging and difficult it is to build a YouTube channel from the ground up. It is incredibly difficult.
It's a lot of work. Of work.
It is.
You gotta be able to stay consistent, and as long as you're consistent with it, then that's how you're able to build the following that you're able to have. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's what it takes. So just appreciate the effort that's going on here currently with Angry Man Sports Media, and like I said, hit the like button and support by subscribing, or just giving in super chats or whatever it is. You feel me?
I appreciate that, man, because it does. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of consistency, and it takes a villain, and I am that villain.
Yeah, that's a key part right there. That's definitely a key part of it. That right there.
They either hate me or they love to hate me. They either love me or they love to hate me.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. So yeah, like I said, Gregory Quattlebaum, what's going on with you, Gregory? You are the inspiration behind the reason why we now have links for you all to join the chat. So yeah, we're open for anybody that's ready to join. Oh, I got my girl 2 Cent in here. I got to get 2 Cent off in the building. 2 Cent, what's going on?
What up, Greg? What up, Greg? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you read my little member chat thing I put out from
I missed it.
my whatever month membership. But I said like Turkey getting exposed, and by exposed I mean people are really gonna be more realistic about what he's in the sport to do or what he's capable or able of doing.
Yep.
But on this rare occasion, Greg, I kind of disagree with you about the Brian Norman situation.
Let me hear it.
The boxing source, what's your name?
JR.
JR. Just like JR was saying, Brian Norman got that belt unintentionally, I guess you could say. They thought he was going to be fooled, but he ended up winning, right? And so, just like JR said, it's starting to come off as if they were trying to sell the belt, because where I agree with you at, Greg, is that the fight wasn't ready yet. I mean, just all of a sudden he gets the belt, and then now you want to jump in there with boots. I feel like he needed more time, a couple of more fights, fill in some holes or whatever the case may be. But if they wanted to fight, then cool, that's fine. But to try to come into a fight and ask for millions of dollars because you've been emailed a belt when we don't even have the normal metrics that we go off of to figure out how much somebody should get paid for a fight. Like, you never headlined a card. You've never you haven't defended your belt. Like, what Greg, what would be your reasoning or your point that you felt like, oh, Brian Norman should get this $2 million or whatever it is that he asking for? Because it starts to get to a point where I feel like people in the fans, not you per se, but they want these boxers to simp for these belts. Like, oh, you got a belt I want, let me just give you whatever it is you want or whatever you're asking for. And I believe if Boots were to do that, he would set a precedent, because people already want an exorbitant amount to fight him because of who he is as a fighter. But unfortunately, his pay or his stardom hasn't reached up to his skill level yet. So he's not like Tank Davis, where you can ask for these crazy amounts of money because you quote unquote know you're gonna lose and all of this other stuff. His money or revenue haven't caught up to that yet. So what are your points to why you felt like, oh, they should have paid him the money or whatever the case may be?
So let me make sure I'm clarifying what I'm stating here, because when I initially started this conversation in regards to Brian Norman and Jaron Ennis, it was around who's ducking who, and I'm saying that neither one of these gentlemen are ducking, and I'm explaining why there's a rationale for what Brian Norman Jr. is doing, because again, you have a very dangerous opponent in Jaron Ennis that could derail his career. He is bringing a belt, so what he made in the past is irrelevant. And this would also be the biggest and best opponent that Jaron Ennis has faced in his career as well. So I get the rationale for pushing for more money. And then when you think about the situation that he's currently in, he being Jaron Ennis in a situation where he needs to fight Karan again, then I'm trying to leverage that to get as much money as I possibly can. I understand the situation, and I'm saying it's not a duck. I'm not saying whether or not he deserves $1.8 million or $2.5 million, because that's all dependent upon what the actual promoter of the promotion can actually do. Can it earn a profit at that amount with whatever it is that Boots wants? That's my whole point. I'm not saying he deserves it or not. I'm just saying I can see the rationale and the reason why I don't think it's necessarily a duck. And then on top of that, my push was, I thought all of these guys were affiliated with Turki Alalshikh. Why can't they get him involved to make a fight for a fighter that Turki Alalshikh said that he has an affinity for in Jaron Ennis? That was my only point. that make
the
sense?
Turkey thing. This fight checks off all the boxes of all the reasons all y'all said that Turkey came into boxing. It's a
Exactly.
fight the fans want to see.
Exactly.
If money is the issue, he should be able to put up the money. You know what I'm saying? So why are they not doing that? And Jr., I know you're saying like this not a Riyadh season card. So are you saying that Turkey? Because I'm still unclear exactly what Turkey's role is. So are you saying that Turkey, if Matchroom is doing a fight, he's not doing no financing for that? But if they're on the Riyadh card, then he's going to finance the fight.
Correct. That's pretty much it. It's like for example, it wouldn't be like no different than if Top Rank had an event. Like say for example, what was it? Like when Luis Alberto Lopez fought Angelo Leo in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Like Turki Alalshikh wouldn't necessarily be involved in that because he wouldn't feel like that's something that he would kind of invest in. But they still, have fighters under, Top Rank that have been involved in cards that Turki Alalshikh, has basically financed. So, like, if you're going to have something like that for Top Rank, or like say for Matchroom or Queensbury, they'll have their own independent events that they'll be able to do that Turki Alalshikh is not going to be necessarily involved in. So, in this particular sense, if he feels like, hey, you know what, this particular fight I'm not necessarily interested in, I'm not going to, have money to be put towards that, then he's not going to do it. That's why, I have brought up the example of Virgil Ortiz versus Sergey Bohachuk, because it was originally supposed to be Virgil Ortiz versus Tim Tszyu, but when Tim Tszyu wasn't cleared, then they had to find another opponent for Virgil Ortiz. They found Sergey Bohachuk. They still wanted to keep that date there to have it in Los Angeles, but Turkey had basically said no to that. So they ended up moving it and having it be headlined over in Las Vegas. So similar thing here with Matchroom is that they'll have a card, Matchroom card, over November 9th, scheduled November 9th, Wells Fargo Center, but it's all Matchroom. It's not necessarily Turkey that's going to, have some investment towards that.
Hey, real quick, guys, before we continue this conversation, let me address a couple things in the chat. So shout out to Big Tyrone 720, $2. No Diddy Greg is the furthest thing from a model. Diddy, I'm not sure what that means.
That's terrible.
What does that mean?
He said, "No Diddy."
I think he's trying to say
you're
not cute
thing from a model, bro. That's what he said.
I'm the furthest thing from a model.
Yeah, I guess so. Because I don't know if it's a response to something, but I think that's what he's referring to.
I'm a man. Why would I be a model? I'm confused.
I don't know, but it sounded like he was responding to something.
I don't really know what that means. I'm one of the handsomest ninjas on the planet, so I don't know what you talking about, brother. And that's for real. Let's see. ASVP TV, yeah, Greg, call on your Zaddy. No, that's your Zaddy. Shout out to Barbara D in the building. Oh, and she just hit us with the $5. Appreciate you, Barbara D. Thank you. All right. 2 Cent, was there something you wanted to say?
I wanted to ask if there, would y'all agree there's a difference between champions and belt holders?
I think no. I think they're the same thing, but I don't think every champion is made the same or is of the same quality. I think that's what you're saying.
Now, my question is, if they fed Norman one time, would you think they would try to feed him again?
Hold up, say that one more time. If Norman did what?
If they fed Brian Norman one time, wouldn't they try to feed him again to somebody else, possibly?
Well,
okay.
Well, in that sense, and this is what I said earlier before you joined on 2 Cents. The thing with Brian Norman is that they also had the buzz of him potentially having his first defense of the title with Teofimo Lopez. and they had a venue there in Madison Square Garden for it, but it was going to be on a Friday night instead of a Saturday. So on Teofimo Lopez's side, he's like, man, I'm a quote unquote Saturday fighter. I'm not a Friday fighter. So he ended up like mixing that potential fight like right off the top. But you know, with Teofimo Lopez basically being a headline fighter that's main evented fights on ESPN multiple times, then it's almost like they're saying Brian Norman, even though he's the WBO welterweight champion, he's still a B-side. So that kind of like tells you like what they're kind of like thinking about Brian Norman at this particular sense.
I just would hate for this to be a missed opportunity for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I kind of feel what you're saying. Because right now, at least from what Dan Rayfield had reported, that Brian Norman will be involved in the November 8th card in Norfolk, Virginia, with his title defense against Derek Cuevas. So we got to see what happens with that. If that ends up being confirmed there. Now, I think it was Carl Moretti was the one that told Dan Rayfield that was the case, or that was going to be the fight for Brian Norman Jr. So we got to see how he performs in that first, and then what would be next for him. Now, another thing that I was told was that the current deal that Brian Norman had him fighting 3 times a year under the Top Rank deal, and he's already fought twice. So there you go.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying when you say that is it a possibility that they might try to feed him to someone else? Because I think the performance that he had prior to, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it wasn't a great performance, and then he comes in and wins that title. Possible.
Oh, Danielson Boca Chica. You talking about Norman's last fight?
No, the fight before that, not the one where he actually won the interim title, but he didn't look great in that fight. So I understand what it is that you're saying, and it depends on what Top Rank business model is and what Top Rank sees in a fighter, right? If a fighter is being challenging to work with, if a fighter is not willing to make certain fights, then, or if you don't feel like the fighter has the talent level or the charisma to do or be a star, then yeah, it's a possibility that you could feed them. But why would you feed them to someone that's not on your promotional company is the question. So I don't see this being a situation where Top Rank will be willing to feed them to Matchroom unless it's an absorbent amount of money involved. And if it is, then it's going to be involved. It's going to be Turki Alalshikh involved. But let me tell you this. And this is another conversation that I have, and a lot of you guys know I'm based in Atlanta. It's another conversation that I had with someone that's also based in Atlanta that has some connection to Brian Norman Jr. I can tell you unequivocally, they are not afraid of Jaron Ennis. I can tell you that unequivocally, they are not. I've never spoken to Brian Norman Jr. This individual probably could get me connected with Brian Norman Jr. I've just never asked because I don't like to use relationships in that manner. But unequivocally, they are not afraid of Jaron Ennis and believe that they will win that fight. They don't believe Boots is who people think he is. I'll put it like that. Thoughts on that? Any thoughts on the people in the chat?
Well, I mean, I've heard that from his father. Of course, his father has been, involved in multiple interviews over the past few days. And one of them was from 5 days ago or so there through Brunch Boxing. And he, basically mentioned that, he just feels like Brian Norman Jr. is not afraid of Jaron Ennis whatsoever, but all this just breaks down to business. As far as like getting the most out of what you can. I mean, this is still professional boxing, keyword professional. And as a professional, you got to be able to get the best deal as you can. You're basically an independent contractor when it comes to this. So if you feel like, you aren't necessarily getting the best deal for a fight that you feel is of a certain level, then you're gonna, ask for more. So, I mean, on their side, like you said, Greg, you don't blame them for asking for a certain amount of money. It's just that the group that's putting up the money, do they feel like it's profit? They'll be able to get enough profit off of that to
I
make sure
agree.
the fight turns up. So if you don't feel like that, then they ain't gonna do it.
Absolutely, and they shouldn't do it if the fight is not going to make the same amount, make the profit that they are expecting to throw on a fight. Now, here's one thing I will say: if you are Eddie Hearn and 1.8 or let's say it's 2.5, because that's the number I heard, 2.5, right? If it's $2.5 million and whatever Jaron Ennis wants would allow you to break even, you do the fight. You do the fight. And the reason why I'm saying you do the fight is because you brought Jaron, you got a finite amount of time to turn Jaron Boots Ennis into a star. So you're doing one of two things. You're either going to make sure that he has the quickest path possible to becoming undisputed to help build him as a star, or you're going to have him drop the belt at 147 and move up to 54 where there's better names. That's what you should be doing, right? One or the other. But I do want to bring the good brother, also named Greg, into the building. What's going on, fam?
How you doing? Can you hear me?
Well, how are you?
I'm just fine. It's this ongoing soap opera that boxing.
What's going on, Mr. Greg?
Hey, 2 cents. Congratulations to you. I already sent you a little email, but I'm glad you came on with the panel now, Greg, as well. A lot of people.
Oh, what happened?
I said I'm glad that you're here with the panel now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, gotcha.
A lot of people be coming to see you, so look for it. But what I was about to say, it seems like so many fighter camps, everybody thinks they're playing chess.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are playing checkers and don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
You have so many hands in each fighter's pocket. So they're asking for a crazy amount of money. A lot of the times it's because of how many people's hands are already in their pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to still get enough money and pay who they have to pay. I think in the case with, I think Jaron has to pay someone, and so does the other gentleman. They have to disperse. Yeah, Norman. Yes, they have to disperse so much money, so they're asking for a lot. With the entering of Turki Alalshikh, I think a lot of them are seeing a possible payday very quickly because he has the illusion or supposedly he has a large checkbook. So quite naturally, they're going to try to grab whatever they can as fast as they can. And that's what I think is also playing a role here and why these fights are supposed to be happening. Then suddenly the powers that be say something else, et cetera, and we find ourselves on, talking about who's ducking, who's not ducking, what happened, and et cetera. As long as there's not one entity, I think I've said this before, that governs boxing, we're going to continually have scenarios just like this.
Yeah.
Even, and not to get off the subject too much, but the fact with Crawford, for instance, trying to get with Canelo, and then suddenly the WBO mandates that Fundora enters into negotiations in 30 days. Then Canelo turns around and says, yeah, well, maybe I will fight. So you have all this kind of confusion, and everybody's going to, if I was Crawford, certainly he's probably going to look at how much money is going to be in each one of these scenarios for him. And whether he makes the right choice, only time will tell, or the next 30 days, I should say, will tell. But this is where the confusion comes from for a lot of fans, because it's hard. Plus, fighters are only fighting once a year for the most part. So it's hard to follow almost anybody because you see them in April of last year, and then you see him again this April. You got some questions about the performance, but you also know for all of the fighters, it's always going to be they're out of the ring for such a long period of time, and then they done moved up into another weight class, and now they got to get acclimated, and then all these other machinations take place. So I don't know what kind of resolution that's easily available or readily available right now. Because if I was Jaron, I mean, I believe all of them want to fight. It's just a matter of how much can I get, how fast can I get it, and then your people who are behind you, who've already invested money into you, well, they don't want to really necessarily risk their investment. So if I got a softer fight here that I can be made, that I'll get the lion's share of the money, yeah, I'm going to take that. But meanwhile, fans are wondering why you fight this guy when you should be fighting who we want you to see.
Yep.
And that's an ongoing scenario that I think all of us have seen, even with fighters that we like. I mean, we just keep seeing it. The situation right now is who's actually going to fight. The only fight that I really think we got that's signed is that we probably want to see to some degree is Canelo and Edgar Berlanga. And, you know, I don't see that being going but one way either. But you can't build your name continuously off soft fights when we want to see you at least take some risk. I get it. You know, we're not risking our lives. They are. But you're in the sport where that risk is a part of what you're doing in the first place. So you have to satisfy the fans, because right now everybody's wondering who's buying fights, because now the technology allows you to for all practical purposes, still to fight without having to pay for it in the first place. So you're going to see more fighters want to get guaranteed money, something that we used to think, or many people used to think, will get the back end money too. Well, there's problems there as well. So I just, I shake my head sometimes because we all love the sport. We know how messed up it is and how many problems there are. We still keep watching it, but we're increasingly becoming more dissatisfied. It's only going to be a matter of time before either the fight game falls off a little bit more than it has, or somebody like, for instance, when Al Heyman came into the boxing game,
Yep.
we thought, and it looked like he almost had it on lock. I wish he had just used one platform when he first came on, as opposed to multiple platforms, because you were all over the place trying to find his fights at some point. And that's why a lot of money got lost or wasted, I think. I'm glad that fighters were getting paydays, though. I'm very happy about that, because for so long, fighters were not getting decent money. So that part was good. So maybe we may see again somebody come in that maybe has the same kind of money or more, who can grab all the fighters as Al did. And I think that's the only kind of way we're going to really see. I think our conversation will be more about who's going to win and talking about the skill sets of the particular fighters, as opposed to who gets them into the ring next, or who's ducking who, or how much somebody is being paid, because we know those fights are going to continually be made. That's just my take on what's going on just in the world of boxing right now. Because right now, it's a lot of confusion and it's a lot of frustration for us as fight fans. I'm sure all this you're getting exposed on YouTube and you're getting exposed on social media for you saying one thing, and then you find out a whole nother thing was said, or there was miscommunications, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how I'm looking at what's going on in boxing right now. Even with this scenario, I'd love to see Jaron Boots fight Spence and fight Crawford and get those kind of fights that we're really excited to see. But
he knocks Crawford out.
Huh?
He knocks Crawford out.
Well, let's see it. I don't believe that, but let's see it. And I think I just saw did somebody did Jaron just talk about just dropping 147 and coming up to 154?
I saw that somewhere earlier today. Either someone sent it, Jason might have sent it to me or something like that, but or someone said it to me, I can't quite recall. But I heard that he's either going to defend against Karan or drop the 147-pound IBF title and move to 54. And I think it came from Eddie Hearn.
Okay. Well,
now, people in the chat, if I'm wrong about that, correct me, but I thought I saw that somewhere.
Well, I actually hope all those guys that can get to 154, where it's going to be almost impossible for them not to fight because all of them are in the same weight class, that might be helpful too, although I'm sure there'll still be struggles about who's getting paid what and who's the A side and who the B side. But the point of the matter is, if you got Spence, Crawford, Boots, Ortiz, Fundora, even Tim Tszyu, you got all of them in that weight class, and all of them have to fight one another because everybody's there. I think that's the only way we're gonna see those guys fight. Because long as one stays at 147 and the other one at 154 and he's looking at 168, and the other one hasn't really decided to get back in the ring, the fights that we're gonna have are the debates that we have on YouTube.
Yeah, but here's the challenge right now with that, and then I'm gonna throw it back to you, JR. But Crawford, when you're talking about those fighters, those groups of fighters, Crawford is the issue, and he's been the issue for quite some time. Okay, and this is a fair take. People are gonna say I'm a hater, and I'm fine with them saying I'm a hater because everybody loves to hate Greg. They either love me or they hate me, or they love to hate me. But Crawford was directly tied to Errol Spence, and that was a part of the reason why the 147 pounds division was so delayed, waiting for Terrence Crawford to fight Errol Spence. And now, after that fight, he continued to hold up the 147-pound division, even though he had officially moved up to 154. Not only that, after Fundora won against Tszyu, then he wants to hold up Fundora while fighting Madrimov. And he still wants to hold up Fundora in hopes to get a Canelo fight. He is the issue. So I either want him to retire or face Jermell Charlo so he can get put in the dirt. Your thoughts on that, Jim?
I want to catch up with everything. First, start off with what Brother Gregory Q was talking
about. By the way, I'm sorry I didn't speak to you. I'm sorry.
But one key thing that you mentioned when it comes to like these fights being talked about or fights being made or negotiated is that, in some cases there are too many hands in the pot. And that really affects, how much, a fighter may ask for. One example that I bring up a lot, or I brought up a lot in the past, is in reference to Shakur Stevenson. And Shakur Stevenson, at the time, was promoted by Top Rank, managed by, Jay Prince and Antonio Leonard. And so you have to, cater to your promoter, cater to your managers. You have to pay off your trainers and all that other stuff. So when everything, comes in and you got to pay all those guys out, then you just get, a little bit of what you've already, earned for the fight. You're the one stepping in the ring, but you got to pay out all these people money. So you go fast forward to now, we talk about Brian Norman. Brian Norman has a trainer, has a manager, has a promoter. And as I mentioned before, they're talking about 20, or as Brian Norman Sr. said, 25% that they would have to give out towards Top Rank in order for him or Brian Norman Jr. to fight Jaron Ennis. So that is their supposed basis for asking for how much they would ask for in order to fight Jaron Ennis in the unification bout. Okay, so we break it down. It's like 25% to the promoter, a certain percentage to the WBO, and potentially the IBF if he fights and beats Jaron Ennis. Your percentage towards your trainer, and whatever you do for your gym. So once you get all that together, That's how much money you kind of like shell out. And one of his managers said, hey, 1.5 ends up breaking down to about 800 and something $1,000 that Brian Norman Jr. would be paid for a fight against Jaron Ennis. Now, is it much more than what he's made? Yeah, sure. But, you know, when you talk about overall percentages, then yeah, that kind of like hurts him. You know what I'm saying? But that's a whole nother story. But to your point, having too many people in the pot really affects, you know, what these fighters ask for, you know, and I think that's what's holding up a lot of things is that a number of fighters have this situation where they deal with managers, they deal with like advisors or other things like that that say, hey, I want this percentage, I want that percentage, I want this percentage. And if they agree to it, then hey, they're locked in with that. You feel me? So in this case here with Brian Norman Jr. versus Ron Boots Ennis, at least right now, maybe it doesn't make sense because at least what they say is, hey, I'm demanding this much because this is how much that I got to be able to, you know, see if I could be able to make. You feel me? Because it's like, hey, I know that they say he's about to fight in November 8th for about what, some change maybe in comparison to what he would have against Ron Ennis. But it's still like, hey, I could go ahead and have this fight now, get it out of the way, build my profile up so that if there's a potential fight later on down the line with Boots Ennis, and I do still ask for that amount of money, then maybe I'm a little bit closer to actually having that agreed to, you know? So that's on one front. The other thing that you were talking about was in reference to, what was it, 154, right? And that, you know, that's a crazy situation as it is. You got Terrence Crawford. You got the whole thing there with Sebastian Fundora. They're revisiting this whole thing with the WBO. You got Errol Spence Jr., who, as of right now, I'm still unsure if he's, you know, in the thing for him to get back in the ring. You have Jermell Charlo, who, you know, made the instance that he wants to return to 154, but I'm trying to get confirmation if he's trying to get back into the ring this year because he's a WBC champion in recess. And if that's the case, guess what, Sebastian Fundora? Guess who you're going to have to face first? Jermell Charlo. So the whole thing with the WBO might not even be in the picture because Jermell Charlo might have first dibs. That's number one. And then the thing there with Terrence Crawford is if he's really motivated in facing Canelo Alvarez, we know that fight's not going to happen this year. Terrence Crawford has fought once a year from 2020 up until now. So I would be really surprised if he has another fight this year that would involve Sebastian Fundora because we haven't seen him fight more than once a year for some time, even though we would really like that because we want to be as active as possible, but we just haven't seen it here from Terrence Crawford.
And we forget about Laura.
I'm glad you explained that.
Real quick, I want to give ASVP TV some love. $4.99. You right, Crawford is the problem because he beats them all. All right, I wanted to get that in there because I had missed it. I'm sorry, I cut somebody off. Please continue.
He was right.
One more. Impress Sports Channel, $1.99. Spence is holding up the fight. LOL. Spence isn't holding up anything. I want to address that after you guys get your conversation on.
I just wanted to say real quick to JR, I'm glad you broke that down like that because when you see it from that perspective, you kind of get a better understanding of why the cross-promotional fights, the big fights, don't happen.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to pay the promotion 25%. Like, golly, like that's a lot. You get what I'm saying? So that's obviously discouraged. They don't want you going cross promotions to make the fight. So I would tell Brian Norman, take a page out of Terrence Crawford's book, but just do it a little different. Hold on to that belt.
Fight Tomato Kings.
Not fight Tomato Kings. See, that's the difference. Fight more fights that the fans perceive to be competitive to build your stock. And then with the end of your contract, take that belt, go over there and fight Boots, and you'll probably get even more than what you're asking for right now.
So
because
go ahead.
Because in order to make the fight cross-promotionally, it almost seems like somebody's going to lose some money somewhere.
Facts.
And obviously, without Turkey involved, since he seems to be the only person willing to lose money, the fight just not gonna happen.
And he ain't gonna be willing to lose money for too much longer. I'm telling you all.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think, I mean, it's a longer way of doing it, that I think Canelo has done this with all the hands that are in your pot. And if you're a guy like Brian Norman, who's about to get a biggest payday of his life, is to turn around and talk to all of those hands and ask for them to take a smaller percentage of what it is that they want. Because this is your first time getting this money, and that's going to be their first time getting that much money from you. So if you're getting 25%, maybe take 20 or 18% this time. And down the road, maybe we can put a few percentages here and there to make up for that, so you can get this high profile fight, because my understanding is they adamant about knocking Boots out. So you got to sometimes go the extra mile to get what it is that you want. And if that would have gotten the fight, or maybe they even tried and it didn't work, I don't know. But it's something to consider. Everybody will be willing, I think, to take a little bit less to get something that's coming from a guy that this is his first time ever been offered $1.5 million. First time ever. I think his last fight, he got what, 150 grand or something like that.
Yeah, maybe that.
And I think everybody should be agreed to do that, because you're going to get much more. Even if you got, even if it was 500,000, you still was going to get more than you got the last time this guy fought. I'm sorry. So that's one way that some of these newer guys that get this unexpected payday or payday offer, how they didn't take it and how they didn't think like that goes back to how good your business model is and how good your business people are. Because I know if I'm suddenly find myself from 100,000 to 1.5, we doing something to get that. Yeah, I know I got to bring all of y'all with me, but everybody got to take a little bit less, but you still don't get more than the last time, as opposed to standing in, no, I want my whole 25%, or we just not going to agree. That doesn't make sense, especially when everybody's fighting once a year because you can't get the fights done in time. So that's another way to, at least I think most fighters should, who at least find themselves in that position, should at least consider doing that, and we could get to see the fight as well.
So let me address a couple of things in the chat. Got another super chat, so always appreciative of the super chats. Impress Sports Channel. Man, I'm so sick of this dude, man. Spence Crawford by activated rematch clause, knowing he needed eye surgery. False. Terrence Crawford was actually the one that held up that by trying to leverage weight in order to get a bigger split. So let's remember that part. And then somebody's, man, I tell you guys, and I mean this wholeheartedly, we got to be the biggest channel.
They got Greg. Somebody.
We got to have.
Look like they're hacking Greg, man.
Say that again.
You've been going in and out, Greg.
I've been going in and out. I don't know what's going on with that, man. I saw that.
Your camera and your voice. Okay, you're here now.
It might just be the the internet connection. I'm not sure, but because I'm in a different location right now. I don't know, man. It might be acting crazy or something. I don't know. When I look at everything, though, everything looks like it's not doing that for whatever reason. So whatever reason it's only doing that is I only see it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of weird, because I'm looking at the background and everything. I'm looking at all of us in here, and I'm not blinking in and out when I look at everything that's running here. But what I was about to say is, approaching 18,000 subscribers, we got to be like one of the biggest channels that have, I mean, like an absolute ton of Terrence Crawford supporters. I mean, it's crazy. We're supposed to be the biggest Errol Spence channel, yet we got all these Terrence Crawford fans on here. I don't understand it. I guess that's part of
Spence fans just don't act like that. They here though.
We got one more super chat. Slap happy. Daddy P. 2 Cent is right, but Norman can only fight who's at top rank. What did you say, 2 Cent?
I said the Earl Spence fans here, they just
I
don't
thought
act
I heard
like
you
the
say
Crawford
something.
fans. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We hear you.
That's fair. Yeah, I can hear you. That's fair. So let's, hey man, stop it. See, this is what I'm talking about right here. There's a bunch of haters talking about pay your electric bill. I'm in a rental. I don't even know what you're talking about. This is my electric bill. So let's talk about something that somebody just put in the chat. I mentioned earlier that I spoke to someone today who will remain nameless, and I wanted their thoughts on the potential of Errol and Fundora. And someone in the chat just mentioned, oh, Errol Spence is holding up the fight for Terrence Crawford at 154. I don't know if that's true. This person, who again is well connected, and I personally feel like if there was some real news to share there, maybe he wouldn't have shared it, but he probably would have just kind of like gave me one of those political answers. But just in this conversation, it doesn't feel like that fight is really like solidified. You know what I mean? Like you got to think about a number of things that are currently going on. Like, when was the last time you all saw Errol?
Okay, Greg.
I
think I seen a picture of him with his family on vacation.
Yeah, but Greg,
I think I seen them kissing a dolphin or something.
Yeah. But Greg, the way that you explained that particular person, it's almost like I have an idea of who it is, but I ain't even go into all of that. But
ping me later, because we got some of the same people we talked to.
Yeah, I know.
But I'll never say their names like on.
Okay, but
yep.
In reference to Errol Spence, I've been trying to get into it as well as I recently come back from Texas, and there was one gym that I went to that involves a trainer that has been basically in a buzz to potentially be Errol Spence's trainer, and that hasn't really gotten much traction as at least months ago. But
exactly.
At least now, it really hasn't gotten much traction. That's on one front. The other thing is that I have another person that I talk with that's around the Dallas area that could get more information in reference to that. So I'm waiting for that as well, but that won't be until after this weekend at the very least. But from my perspective, I really don't see the chances of Errol Spence coming back this year. That's why I mentioned over the past couple of weeks that, and I hinted at this earlier, I said with Sebastian Fundora, the other opponent for him would be Jermell Charlo, which is why I brought up that he's the WBC champion in recess. And with him being the champion in recess, he has first dibs for that WBC belt. So I'm like saying, hey, maybe we got this thing here with Jermell Charlo that could potentially be the opponent for Sebastian Fundora instead of Errol Spence Jr. And that also would throw a wrench in reference to Terrence Crawford, because even though they have that whole thing with the 30 days, if Terrence Crawford and his party is not necessarily interested in a fight with Sebastian Fundora, then they're not going to pursue it, and they'll end up, relinquishing that particular mandatory status. But I don't think that really would matter to him if he's for legacy type fights or money, type fights. So if he has a bigger fight on the horizon, why would he, entertain Sebastian Fundora when he could still potentially get a Canelo Alvarez or maybe another big fight that's out there for him?
So let me comment to that real quick. To your point, because that's exactly where I was going. Like, there is no trainer, based off of what I could gather, not only in this conversation but other conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see how it was really possible about to go into September
Yeah.
that Errol Spence is the next opponent for Sebastian Fundora. And we haven't seen Errol training or anything. And I couldn't get any verification that Errol was training from this person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense to me. I personally, and this is another conversation that I've had here recently from someone else. It doesn't sound like Crawford's getting Canelo. Like, and this person would have an idea. I'm not saying that they're like Crawford's lawyer or anything like that, but somebody that's close enough in the game where it's like they would have heard maybe if there's some interest from Canelo. I'm hearing that virtually there's no interest from Canelo unless they like blow his socks off with an offer. And before I pass it back to you, Gregory Qualabon, because I think you were about to say something. Slap Happy Daddy P just hit me with another $4.99. I got you. Can only be held up if it is in serious negotiations. Errol Terrence not in negotiations. All right, Gregory Q.
What I was about to say in reference to Charlo and Spence, since they both are still PBC fighters, both of them have been out of the ring because both of them have suffered a loss. It's very possible that next year that those are the two who will see each other in the ring as opposed to Fundora or Ortiz or anyone else. That's a possibility because that's an in-house fight. It should be pretty easy to make. And I think I recall both of them saying that they had no problem competing with one another. So I don't think that's something that we shouldn't consider as well, because it's an easy fight to make. And everybody who likes both of those fighters, and I like them as well, will watch that, and it'll probably generate a great deal of revenue at the gate and on pay-per-view. So that's another long-term situation that could be already in play. Because as we know, we're talking today, and next month we might hear rumors and finally an announcement and finally a date. And so everybody else who think they in play find themselves on the outside as well. But this is why when you have so many entities that can do and make decisions and put together fights and people trying to do cross promotions, why we never really, as we were just saying. Now, I think everybody would want to see that fight, by the way, to be quite honest. But I think that's one more reason why we don't see the fight that we want to see when we would like to see them, when both fighters are at their prime. I don't think Crawford's getting Canelo. I don't care what Canelo says. I don't care really what other fighters say. Because if you're not financing the fight in its entirety, you can claim you sent somebody a contract, you can claim this, and you can claim all of the things that you want to say. But if you're not funding that fight and show that you got the financing to pay whoever it is you want to fight, and everybody's satisfied with a piece of the action they're going to get, just shut up. Because that adds to the confusion as well. And that goes for every fighter. I get you want to be competitive with everybody else, but don't be acting like you got so much power and you got so much control that the only reason the fight's not happening is because you say so. That's as we all know, we've got a chance to look behind the curtain of the business of boxing and see what the chaos is. So we know the fighter is even though that's the main thing we want to see, the fighter is really in a lot of ways a small part of how things actually happen. Yeah, we can put you together, but we making the decisions because we have the money. As I've always said, he who got the gold makes the rules. So, and they don't have the gold. So they're trying to get a piece of the action. So that's how that's going to go for fighters. But I'd like to see Charlo. And I forgot to mention Charlo when I was talking about, and that's one more fighter in 154. So if all of those guys are there, and I think Jaron Boots matches up with all of them. And we got to remember there's also Danny Garcia, who, he's still.
Now, Danny at 160, I think.
Yeah, he's going to be fighting.
He went up to 160?
Yeah, he went up to 160.
Laura.
I got a question for the panel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, like, First of all, let me do Spence. Really, I'm be honest with y'all. The longer Spence doesn't fight, the less my desire is to see him fight.
Same.
Because it's like, dude, like, you really think you've been to come back after the loss you just took, this long layoff, whatever issues you got going on, we don't know, and you're gonna do all that and hop in the ring? Like, I don't want to see that. If you're not gonna take a tune up or two and do it right and be more cautious, it just most likely will probably end up in a disaster. Now, if he is able to come back, get in the ring and fight somebody and win 1 or 2 belts, that would be amazing. And that would just solidify his story. But we got to be realistic. That's a very rare thing in boxing. Mm-hmm. And as far as the Terrence Crawford and Canelo, my question is, how much money would Terrence Crawford really make fighting Canelo? You see how much Canelo is asking for to fight him. How much would Terrence Crawford get? How much revenue do people think that fight will really bring in? I know the diehard Crawford fans are like, oh, people want to see that. People want to see that. But I think after the Charlo fight, people are kind of turned off with the move up in weight class type fight.
Max 500.
500 what?
500,000 buys max.
500,000 buys.
I mean, but see, that's what I'm saying. Canelo can fight somebody else and get that.
Yep, that's what I've been saying.
Yeah.
So 2 cents. You don't think because with the loss that Spence took and the loss that Charlo took as well, that those two coming back into the ring to fight each other would be worth seeing?
Well, at one point they did say they would fight each other, but it would have to be for the money. It would have to be a lot of money, basically, is what they were saying. So, but it's more, and who's to say that Charlo would even fight Spence? Huh? What you say?
It's more likely now with Derek James no longer in the corner of both.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I didn't take that into consideration. That's true. But I don't know. We'll just have to see. I really don't think Crawford wants to fight Fundora. I'm curious if he's going to take this fight. I'm really curious if he's going to take this fight.
If the fight happens, I think that's all of the fights at 154 for Crawford, in my opinion, are going to be challenging. Fundora, Boots, Charlo. I don't think Spence, and maybe even Ortiz. But I do believe everything at 154 will require more out of him from not just a skill set, but he'll have this is like the last fight. He had to really be more intelligent than he was going to be aggressive, because you found I saw it, and I'm sure he saw it too. This is, as they always say, there's a reason for weight classes. And when you're a smaller guy, I don't care what your skill set is, there's going to be a deficit somewhere when you go up in weight. So I think all the fights for him at 154 will still be challenging. I would like to see him actually just fight Charlo and possibly Fundora, but I don't think, and I think we said that before, going any further than 154, I think that's not a wise decision, especially if he goes to 160, because I think who's there at 160?
Nobody really.
Nobody that he will fight.
Oh yeah.
Nobody really notable. Actually, 160 from a talent perspective is much lower than what we got at 154.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
Let me ask the panel a quick question, because I'm curious. Number one, I personally want to see Terrence Crawford fight anyone that's going to beat him. That's number one. Number two, because I saw Jay in the comment section here, and I'm quite tired of it. I kind of want to piggyback off what 2 Cents said. I want everybody on the panel to give a number. What would Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford do from a pay-per-view perspective? What do you believe it will actually do? I want to start with you, JR. How many buys do you do?
Man, I don't know. Because my thing about it is, we're talking about Canelo Alvarez, we're talking about Terrence Crawford in their current situations. I'm basing it off their current situations, right?
Yep.
So I'm talking about Terrence Crawford that's being involved with Turki Alalshikh.
Yep.
Where he had his last event that was part of a combined type of pay-per-view. So it
Yep.
was like the zone pay-per-view, Top Rank, and all that. And you got Canelo Alvarez, who is involved with, at least for now, Amazon Prime pay-per-view. Actually, this particular bout that he has against Edgar Berlanga is his last on that deal. Okay.
Yep.
So my thing about it is that depending on what distributor is going to be, I would say it has to be around 700K pay-per-view buys.
Okay.
Now,
Okay. Go ahead.
Now, with that being said, and you brought it up, and also 2 Cents brought it up, how much will they ask for in order to have that fight take place? Now, on Terrence Crawford's side, he got paid in excess of around $15 million for his fight against Islam Majumov for sponsorships. Yeah, they put that whole 2.5 on the books in the California State Athletic Commission, but with the sponsors, marketing, and all that other stuff, around 12 to 15 million. We know that Canelo makes a minimum of $30 million per fight on his current deal with Heyman Boxing PBC. So you could, pretty much gauge how much each of them would ask for them to fight each other. And if you look at the numbers and try to match them up, I'm saying it won't make sense, but that's why I just don't see how the fight could really, take place or be pulled off unless you're going to have a Turki Alalshikh be involved with it. But is Canelo going to ask for a certain amount of money and Crawford going to ask for a certain amount of money where Turki is going to say, you know what, that much, I don't know if I'll be able to do it. So that's something we got to wait and see.
Quattro Bomb, give me a number. Give me a number you think it's going to do.
Let me explain why I'm giving you this number.
Yep.
This is the last fight on this Amazon Prime deal, right?
Yeah.
Yes. He's going to take the easy Berlanga fight, get the lion's share of the money on that. Going forward, it's time for a new deal. Who is going to sign him? And a lot of people are going to want to make a deal with him who can put fights on, right? So right away, an easy fight with a named fighter, which would be Terrence, would make sense. Okay, I got this new deal. I got a great guy out here who was good at a smaller weight class because Canelo beats up on smaller guys most of the time anyway. So I can see him taking that deal with the fight Terrence with his new deal. I think the fight, as my man here, Boxing Sources said, maximum 750 in terms of pay-per-view buys. How much does Canelo get in the front end and the back end, and how much Terrence gets on the front and back end is the big question. We know Canelo is getting the lion's share again. That's just, they can go back and forth and get as much as he can. Terrence can get as much as he can for that fight, which is what he is going to do, because I think if he takes this fight, that will more than likely be his swan song. Okay, it's no use going and getting beat up in a way. I think he still, even though I think he will try to fight Canelo better than Charlo did, but that's also probably going to get him a little bit more hurt than Charlo got. So I think he's going to go ahead. I think that would be his attitude. I'm going all out. I'm going to crash out with this man. I think he may get 25, maybe. I'm guessing. But if he gets 25, Canelo got 50. It's always going to, or 40. Canelo is always going to get more right now. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the maximum that he'll get. And I think that's the number that will happen.
2 Cent, what do you think?
Maybe between 5 and 650, maybe 650, possibly 7, maybe, but I doubt that. I don't know. I'm curious what Canelo other opponents make.
He did 700 with Mel. I think he did 500 with Munguia, and I think he's probably going to do 500 with Berlanga.
Yeah, he'll probably do 500.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
or less, because like
Ooh.
Crawford just headlined the card. I mean, he's just see the thing is what I think they can do is just do all these promo videos and do all that, and then boom, you're a star. The issue is you haven't built your career that way. You've been focusing on making money and getting the most you can get for the fight. So you don't just wake up one day and be like, oh, I wanna be a star, and then you got Turkey who doesn't even really know how to market a fighter in America, and you think you're gonna be a star all of a sudden. And I think the last card proved that it doesn't work like that. So I don't know. 25 million to fight Canelo, like why? And it's not even like a fight you're saying you want to fight. You're literally saying I only want this fight for money. Like you literally said that out loud, out your mouth. And so I don't know why people think that he wouldn't get in the ring and realize maybe this is too much and do the same thing that Charlo did, because he don't care about what y'all think. He wants to make his money.
So let me add to that, right? So to your point, Terrence Crawford, we just saw him in a fight that there are rumors that are out there. JR, I know you probably heard a number. I've heard the thing didn't do no better than 70,000. So people like to talk about the fact that, well, no, you got to put him in. Terrence Crawford is the type of fighter that you got to put him in there with another fighter and he'll sell. No, he won't. I don't believe that to be true at all. And we had Tim Bradley on last week, and he made that comment. And I think, don't get me wrong, I think if you put him in the ring, I think it's true to a certain extent. If you put him in the ring with somebody, he needs a real dance partner in order to sell. Mm-hmm. But the thing about he and Errol Spence, which was more unique in my opinion, is that they tied Terrence Crawford's name to Errol Spence, and it was tied for years. And it created this debate on YouTube. Who was the better fighter, Crawford or Spence? And that created this demand for this fight that otherwise wouldn't have existed, right? And because of that demand, they were able to do 650 to 700,000 pay-per-view buys, right? Mm-hmm. But when you think about Canelo Alvarez, there is no history between Canelo and Terrence Crawford. There is no great debate that currently exists on YouTube outside of the minds of Terrence Crawford fans. But fans that are not necessarily Terrence Crawford fans, they don't really think it's a competitive fight, and they don't really care about the fight. So because there is no real history between these two individuals, you just got a guy that has no real name value moving up 2 weight classes now, essentially 3, because he's only fought once at 154 pounds. That doesn't make for an intriguing story. And sports is about selling the story. And there is no story here to sell. And because of that, that's why I limited to 500,000 pay-per-view buy. Now, Terrence Crawford made somewhere between $25 and $30 million to fight Errol Spence. So he is going to be looking for something that exceeds that. Let's call it $50 million. Canelo Alvarez is already on record saying he wants 100 to 150 million for the fight. That's $200 million. So in order for them to even cover the salary associated with the fight, they would need to charge $285 for the pay-per-view. That's not covering anything in terms of production, in terms of promoters, in terms of undercard, any of that. I don't see how this fight can possibly happen unless they sell like 3 million pay-per-view buys. They got to have like a Floyd McGregor fight, a Floyd versus Manny fight to make this fight happen.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Greg, because Espinoza mentioned they were asking him about Canelo Crawford, and he was like, I mean, basically saying we got to find a way to market it. That's basically what he said. Like, how we gonna market this fight? We already done the undisputed thing, and now Canelo's not undisputed no more, and neither is Terrence Crawford. So
there's no story. There's no story between the two.
There's no story that could get enough people outside of the boxing world to be interested in it. The thing with Spence Crawford was built over years, years and years of buildup, right? And one of the things that I'd say within the boxing circles is, or particularly with Crawford, and I brought up the example with Porter. I said when they announced Crawford versus Porter, I said, "Yo, that's a fight." going into it, that's a fight. So I, as a boxing fan, would be interested in that fight, right? But if it's not something that could gravitate towards as they say, the casual fan, then you're not going to get those type of numbers. So here with Canelo versus Crawford, the only thing that you could probably sell towards that is that these two fighters are pretty much the two best fighters of this era, and they'll be able to clash. And you would have to sell the fight based off that. And if you're not familiar with, that Canelo has been at 168 for a long time, and that Crawford is just coming up to 154, then yeah, maybe you could get enough interest to where you might get some good numbers off of that. But other than that, you really don't have a selling point, as y'all said. So how is that going to work when these two fighters are going to be demanding a certain amount of money in order for that fight to take place?
A lot also will depend on where is the new deal coming from, and how much money they're going to put into announcing, signing Canelo, and who his first fight will be, what could possibly be Terrence, and how much they will pour into pushing that narrative, and how YouTube and the boxing platforms like this one will even respond if the fight is even made and signed. Mm-hmm. So if they're going to put $75-80 million or whatever amount of money, I know I'm exaggerating, into just marketing the signing and the possibility of the fight. So let's just say they spend 80 mil or 8 million or 10, 15 million. So they're spending a great deal of money to sell the fact that a guy who's been in a weight class for quite a number of years versus a guy who's coming up 2 weight classes, who basically, even though he's very skillful and there are a small fan base, he still only had really one defining fight, which was Earl Spence. That was a great fight and all that kind of thing. But it was just one versus somebody who done basically destroyed most of the people he fought, with the exception of Mayweather and Bivol. So you gotta really have some very good marketing people to generate enough money, because I don't know how much they ultimately will settle in on, but it's going to be still a lot. Even if it's only going to be 100 million, let's just say it's 100 million, give or take a few. That's a lot of work you got to do to be able to get that money back. You need, I want to say 4 million, which I don't think you're going to get 4 billion pay-per-view buys with Crawford. I don't think you're going to get 1 million with Crawford versus Canelo. No. And I'm a Crawford fan, but I'm always going to be real about every fighter. Yeah. I see where the limitations are going to be. And so that's where the problem is going to lie. Mm-hmm. I think the better move for Terrence would be stay at 154 and do business there for whatever amount of time you're going to stay in the fight. But going up, there's just too many problems and too many steps that got to happen for that fight to generate interest, to make some money, and for people to really be excited about seeing it, because I'm not even excited about seeing it. I mean, it's great if he could beat him. I don't think he can, but the excitement of even seeing that doesn't exist. For instance, when Tank was talking about coming up to 147 to fight Crawford, I know it was just talk. There was an interest in that happening just because of who Tank was. I don't think Tank would have won, but there was an interest because he's got a compelling personality. You want to see what he does. You've seen what he does, and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for Terrence, he doesn't have that kind of compelling personality. So you don't want to see what's going to happen in the same way that you would want to see Tank coming up to 147 to fight Terrence. Great.
Yeah, I hear you there. That makes sense to me. Real quick, I got a couple of super chats that I need to address here. So shout out to ASVP TV 499. Got to be careful with Errol. He don't like to pay when he gets his ass whooped. Because that's a reference to Derek James.
Yeah.
Hey, ASVP TV. I thought I had another super chat here, but I guess that's the only one. Oh no, I'm sorry. There's another one here. ASVP TV 499. Never forget 7/29/23. That day, fish got fried and YouTube channels died. Now, let me say this. And Gregory Quattlebaum, Boxing Source, 2 Cent, I know you've all been around for quite some time. There are a lot of channels. I will not say any names, but there are a lot of channels that died on 7/29. They really did. I mean, am I lying about this or what?
No,
I honestly don't know any. All the channels I frequented, they didn't go nowhere.
Yeah, I don't. I don't really delve in that stuff. Of course, with me being in the field, but
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised one bit. I mean, you probably seen that a little bit for some time after April of this year when that decision was made over there in the Barclays Center in New York City involving Devin Haney and that fighter that I won't necessarily mention
Yep.
for his comments. But you probably seen some channels kind of fade away during that particular time. So in reference to the thing for Errol Spence, I wouldn't be surprised one bit about that.
Yeah, I know a few that bit the dust. And I'm not talking about the bigger ones. I'm talking about the smaller ones that, the AM Sports of the world, those size channels that, like, that Errol Spence situation, that was like a silver bullet for some. A lot of people predicted our downfall. We actually more than doubled since then. But yeah, there are a lot of channels that died for sure.
but look how they were built. One of the things I said about you the first time I ever came on, just even before you did the panel, there was a degree of intelligence that was there when y'all were building the channel.
Yep.
There was conversation that made sense and that made you want to keep coming back to talk more and more. A lot of these guys, those little channels that aren't here anymore, were based solely off believing something was going to happen in one fight.
Yep.
That was it. When that fight, as you say, when that fight happened and it went the way that it went, where else were they going to go? It's just like you are a one-trick pony. Mm-hmm. And at some point, that trick doesn't work anymore. And that's what happened. A lot of people fail to understand that this, even though some people do it as a hobby, it's a real business and there's real work you have to continually do to build this channel. You'll have a lot of people who will come on who are going to support you as long as it's worth supporting. If this was a kind of channel where everybody cussing at each other and claiming they're going to come and hurt you because they don't like your opinion and calling you names. I know 2 Cent had a situation, I remember she saying, where people were saying, things that should not have been said to her on a channel. But if you got that kind of channel, it's going to get either pushed off of YouTube or you're just going to fade away because most people really want to talk about boxing.
Yep.
Really want to enjoy the sport of boxing and talking about it and whoever their favorite fighter is, and they want to talk about old fights, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't have that kind of information to even share, to come back and forth with, again, you're gonna fade away as well because you don't know anything. So that's how you have to look at when you build these channels. Mm-hmm. It has to have some substance to it. You can have a lot of flash, but after the flash, there has to be some substance.
Man, what's this stuff they talking about? Like I heard you just mention that they call it Haney channels. Like, so I don't know much about a bunch of Haney channels. I know some guys that are
YouTube payola.
What's YouTube? Oh yeah. You talking about bill paying? Yeah, I know bill pay a lot of these YouTubers, but like that's some of the bigger ones, right? Like I don't know any smaller ones that got cooked after because I didn't know any smaller channels that were all about Haney.
Mm. But in a sense, I kind of like seen that for maybe like you said, the Devin Haney or maybe Errol Spence or Deontay Wilder is another example. Mm-hmm. Where they build it up, but then once their fighter loses, then they end up falling by the wayside because, as Gregory Q said, it's basically they're focusing on one particular result. You know what I'm saying? And if that result doesn't happen, then they pretty much like have no other content or no other direction because they don't really talk about the sport of boxing, And when you don't talk about the sport of boxing, you don't have various topics because boxing is all year round, almost 3 or 4 days a week when it comes to fights or when it comes to stories. So as long as you stay on top of that, you're always going to have content. But are you interested in that particular content to actually do something and at least or put a video up or put an article up or anything like that? And if you're not into that, then yeah, eventually you're gonna get stagnant or you get redundant or basically bland, and people lose interest.
Mm-hmm.
Facts. You cannot. At least I don't think you can. But it's hard to build your entire channel on like one fighter. So like when I hear people come in the comment section, they make comments like the only videos you do about Terrence Crawford. It's so interesting to me. It's like maybe the only ones that show up in your feed are about Terrence Crawford because that's all you look for. But if you actually go to our channel and scroll down the video content and the topics that we've covered, man, we covered Canelo, Tank, Devin, Shakur, Boots, Brian Norman, Tim Zhu, Jamal. Don't get me wrong. I have never pretended that I know every boxer in the world. I don't try to build my chops around every single particular boxer because boy, that's a lot of work that honestly I don't have the time to do with my job. But there is a core boxing, I call it urban boxers that I cover, or that we cover. And it's probably at least 30 fighters that you've heard us talk about. We've interviewed Benavidez. We've interviewed not one of the Charlos. Who do we? Jesus Ramos, Garcia, a number of the coaches. We cover so many people, and you got to be diverse when you're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Bradley, most recently.
But think about it, of the big channels that I think everybody knows, regardless of how many subscribers or people come in, your channel is one of the channels that people know. Regardless of how many people have subscribed to it or what have you, and you got to ask yourself, why is that? Comes back to what I just said. There's substance to the channels. You can have a whole bunch of channels out there, but when you think about the channels that are out there that people know, that people will mention on other programs or boxing platforms, one of them is yours. So it comes back to substance. You don't have to know every single fighter, every single trainer, but you have to have substance when you're talking about the fighters and the trainers and the business part that you do know, that gets people interested to come over and debate with you or talk about how you look or whatever the case they've been doing. But the fact that they're doing it should tell you that the attention that you need to have to your channel is there. And some people are not subscribing, but still watching.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind too.
Yep. Slap Happy Gorilla, what's going on with you, fam? Unmute yourself. You there?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Hold on. Let me unmute him.
Oh, okay.
You unmuted.
Team, Slap Happy Gorilla, Daddy P. What's going on, Donna? Much respect.
How you doing?
Hey, look, I'm a Terrence Crawford fan, and I'm gonna tell you, Terrence Crawford does not need a Canelo Alvarez fight. And I'm gonna tell you this. Canelo Alvarez is not a fighter that you choose to fight. He's a fighter that chooses you. Canelo Alvarez does not need a Terrence Crawford fight for anything. You see who his next fighter is. It's a fighter that's campaigning at 175 that, come on, man. Anyway, he chose Berlanga. He can make about the same amount of money. He may be able to negotiate a little bit more money with Turki Alalshikh than what he's making for Berlanga if he fights Terrence Crawford. But for what? Terrence Crawford, he needs to do something to be chosen. Terrence Crawford will have to do something that I'm not sure he's up to doing. He will have to knock out Jamel Charlo to spark interest for Canelo Alvarez to choose him to fight. I'm not sure if Terrence Crawford can knock out Jamel Charlo based on his performance against Madrimov. Um, he probably can outbox Jamel Charlo, maybe, but that's not gonna spark Canelo Alvarez's interest in picking him to fight. Let's just face it, Canelo Alvarez is in the driver's seat totally. He does not need a Terrence Crawford fight. Terrence Crawford needs to stay busy and he needs to do something at 54 or 60 that will spark Canelo Alvarez to get that fight. If not, like y'all was talking earlier, talking the numbers, it's not going to make sense for Terrence Crawford, and it's not going to make sense for the bank, Turki Alalshikh.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I agree. Now,
See, everybody wants to see him fight
that
Charlo,
fight.
though.
I would love to see that Terrence Crawford fight with Jamel Charlo, but listen, Terrence Crawford, and this is where you got to give him credit. Terrence Crawford has been able to position himself to make a lot of money off the back of Top Rank without fighting guys that were appealing, interesting, even competitive. He did get the opportunity to fight Errol Spence, and even then he was able to leverage more money than what he was worth. Terrence Crawford, in my opinion, has figured out a way to establish and create this legacy and this resume without necessarily having the opponents that many would like to see on his resume. And honestly, I think he is trying to figure out the quickest and fastest path to Canelo Alvarez. He does not. He took Madrimov because Madrimov was the step he needed to take as far as he was concerned to see how he felt at the weight before he moved directly to 68.
And get a
Now that he has done that, he does not want to take another fight at 154. He wants to go directly to Canelo, because to the point that you made, Gregory Q, like those fights at 54 are competitive. And if they are competitive, that means he could lose. And I could easily see Mel short-circuiting him with a shot if he catches him. Because the thing about it is, Mel can hit him from the same range Crawford can hit him from, with power.
Yeah.
I'll do you one better. I honestly, I don't even really think Crawford wants to fight Canelo, because like you just mentioned about the competition and the people he's fought, why would we think he's just going to jump up 2-3 weight classes and fight the best person there? Unless he's willing to take that risk in his last fight. But I just don't see it. Like, I don't see it. And usually Terrence Crawford doesn't fight who he's talking about. So I don't know if we're deflecting and having people look over there while you're over here waiting to see how these belts move around, and if you can hop in there and cop a belt easily, or maybe, you know what I'm saying, kind of like with the Madrimov situation.
Yeah.
But I don't think he wants to fight Canelo. Like, I don't see it.
I mean, that's interesting. But to go on what Slap Happy was saying, for Crawford to get to 154 and get that opportunity to fight for a world title there, Madrimov had just won the belt, months earlier. Different than the thing there with Fundora, but Fundora was just not available, due to injuries. So he ended up, having that deal worked out to fight Israel Madrimov. So he could say, okay, you know what? I got a championship in another weight division. Now it's like, okay, what's next out there for me? Is it, big money fights, or should I continue my career at the 154-pound division? Now, the thing with Canelo Alvarez is, that's the maximum amount of money that you could get to fight anybody in boxing. But, he's there at 168. And the thing about it is like, it's not like Terrence Crawford is interested in fighting anybody else at 168, and you don't see him having any interest in fighting anybody even at 160. Because there's no real interest, from his perspective or overall perspective for him to fight any middleweights out there. So that's why you have Canelo Alvarez there at the top is part of like top pound for pound, been around that range, there for years. So you have, like I was mentioning before, a guy that's been up at the top pound for pound in Canelo, and another guy that's been at the top pound for pound in Terrence Crawford, and then they would be able to face each other. But that's the only thing that they have as a selling point for that fight. Other than that, there's nothing else. So it's like, what's the point?
There's only one fight for Canelo to me that's left at 160, 168, and that's Benavidez.
Yep.
That's the only really fight that's there. Why he can do what he's doing, but that's the only fight for him at 168. Whereas at 154, as we've just named, I think almost 10 fighters that we all know.
Yeah.
At 154, there's business to be done there, and there's money to be made. But they will all be challenging fights. So the question is, do you want to take these challenging fights at 154, the weight class that you can be in, or do you want to take that great leap to 168 where nobody really cares about the fight to the extent that they're saying, yeah, and like I said, I'm a Crawford fan, but I'm saying no. Leave that alone. Take care of this business here, because I was hoping against all hope that Charlo stayed at undisputed, even though the Canelo fight was looming, and he and Terrence fought the next fight. That's what I was hoping for.
Well, you know what? I think some people might indirectly blame Jamal Charlo, because that was supposed to be the original opponent for Canelo Alvarez in that deal. But since Jamal wasn't able to do it, then that's when they entered in Jamel for that. But, to also go into what Slap Happy was saying in reference to Canelo, like, he's getting that minimum, regardless of who he fights. So just having another 10 or $20 million to face Terrence Crawford is like, why do that when I can continue to fight all of these other guys for like 30 to 35 million? That could be either, in a sense, from a skill perspective, could be a much easier fight and just still continue to make that money. You know what I'm saying? So you got that on one end, and then on the other end, like you've been saying multiple times, at least from Crawford's perspective, if you want to actually build yourself as some people kind of like put him among the greats, at least of this era, at the very least. But I'm talking about like all time. If he's able to make that run at 154 pounds and become undisputed at 154, because we already got him as being a two division undisputed champion. You got Alexander Usyk now as a 2-division undisputed champion. You got Naoya Inoue as a 2-division undisputed champion. Why don't you just supersede those other two and try to become a 3-division undisputed champion by going through 154 pounds?
Makes all the sense in the world to me, and it's a lot of fights there that we'll see. That's the thing. It's a lot of fights there.
That I think true boxing fans are interested in seeing.
Oh yeah.
I want to see him with Charlo.
He don't care what y'all want to see.
I know that. Yeah, we know he don't care. Yeah. We got that part too.
See, this is what y'all don't understand. The plan, if you haven't seen it by now, the plan has been the lowest risk with the most reward. And even though I was saying that while this was happening, people couldn't see it. But if you just take a look at Shakur, in my opinion, who's going to try to do the same thing.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think he's going to be able to do it because he's not as exciting as Crawford.
And not
you know what I'm saying? And he's not as good.
Yeah,
so it's going to be even more obvious that he's doing it than it was that Crawford was doing it. But hindsight, looking back, you can see that that's what was going on, because how many Hall of Famers has Terrence Crawford fought?
None. Hasn't been one.
I mean, unless Earl Spence. Earl Spence, you could argue Earl Spence will be a Hall of Famer.
You may be able to argue Sean Porter, maybe.
Nope.
Maybe.
Nope.
But they won't.
But you got to look at the times he
Hey.
fought them. Even when he fought Sean Porter, the man had been out the ring 400 plus days. He had hip surgery. See, a lot of people didn't know that he went through that after the Spence fight. But if you pay attention to Crawford, he waits to catch these fighters when life things and life events have happened to them, and then he goes and fight them. Just like he fought Jose Benavidez. The man had been shot.
Yeah, there's absolutely.
Well,
this is what kills me about this. I've heard so many people talking about Terrence Crawford, and they're comparing him to Floyd. They're comparing him to Ali. They're comparing him to Sugar Ray Leonard. They're comparing him to Sugar Ray Robinson. And I'm like, man, are you guys high?
Yes,
like
they are.
all those fighters have multiple Hall of Famers on their resume.
Yeah,
multiple Hall of
That
Famers.
part is true.
Terrence Crawford doesn't have one, and he himself admitted that he doesn't believe that Errol Spence is going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, and this was even before his run at 147. They look at his run at 140, and they weren't really, high on that run at 140. As a matter of fact, they said that after he became undisputed at 140, that Josh Taylor's run at 140 was better than Terrence Crawford's run at 140. So as far as like his overall resume, overall resume doesn't, is not up to par. Yes, we do not deny his skill set. We do not deny his talents. But it's just the amount, it's just the level of fighters that he's had in the ring that is not really up to par with, the other greats that we talk about, whether it's modern day or previous.
But
that
you
was a
also
good promotion.
You also gotta remember, and also for all fighters, they don't get to dictate who they're going to fight either. They could ask for certain fighters, but if I'm only going to pay for fighter A, and you want to get paid, that's who you're going to be fighting. So you got to keep that in mind too. He didn't just say I'm only going to fight this one, and this one. If I say I'm not going to pay for any of those, then you're not going to be fighting them unless you leave and somebody else is going to pay for you to fight those guys. So we got to keep that in mind too. That
let me address what you're saying real quick, Gregory Q, before you go on, because it kind of ties into what ASVP TV just sent in the $4.99 super chat. So appreciate that. Greg, tell me who were the Hall of Famers he should have fought. That's meaningless to me. I don't give a shit what you can.
Manny Pacquiao.
You can only fight who's available to you, but that's your issue, as they used to say in New Orleans. That's your issue, because at the end of the day, regardless, your resume is your resume, regardless of what you had access to. It is what it is. So I don't care who was available to you to fight. You didn't fight anybody that was a Hall of Famer, and therefore you cannot be put on these guys' pedestal. So you telling me just because there was nobody for him to fight that's a Hall of Famer, we should just give him a pass for that and say that's the mindset of these damn millennials and Gen Zers and Gen Xers, whatever the hell they call. They think that they're supposed to just get a pass because I didn't have the chance. No, fuck that. you didn't do it. It is what it is.
Now the thing with Terrence Crawford is, like, a number of people, we can point to the whole thing with the Manny Pacquiao. Okay, so we got that, but there was one particular instance with Terrence Crawford where his initial contract with Top Rank was pretty much going to be, done, and then he ended up re-upping with Top Rank for a higher guaranteed purse per fight. Now he could have had that option to go ahead and test the waters after that, and could have potentially had the thing there with a run with PBC where it could have been easier to make a fight with Danny Garcia or Sean Porter earlier in his career, or maybe even a Keith Thurman. So you had those open opportunities to do that, but instead you kind of like stick with Top Rank. This is not that much different than when you had Tim Bradley, who left his previous promoter. I forgot who it was there, but he had that instance where he was lined up to fight Amir Khan, and that could have been the fight there, between Tim Bradley and Amir Khan. But then the Pacquiao fight came up for him, for him to have that deal with Top Rank. And so he chose to go forward with Top Rank and have that Manny Pacquiao fight. And well, he still was able to make himself a Hall of Fame career out of, what happened at Top Rank. But, those other fights that could have happened in 147 for Tim Bradley didn't necessarily open up for him because he ended up choosing Top Rank instead of, whether it was Golden Boy or PBC at the time.
Well, remember also.
Let me respond to 100. He said yes, PBC froze him out, so it wasn't PBC job to build up Crawford. PBC did not freeze Crawford out. We've already went over why a lot of those cross promotional fights don't happen. And after hearing the interview with Andre Ward talking about, but talking about how the big fights and the fees that they have to pay to the promoters and all of that. That's why those fights didn't happen, because nobody was about to overpay Bud and lose money to make a fight with him over at the PBC. It wasn't going to happen. So you could essentially say Bud ducked all the fighters at the PBC when he re-signed back to Top Rank.
I had to disagree with that part.
Now, the thing about it is with Terrence Crawford, he fought a couple of guys that were advised by Al Heyman while under Top Rank.
Yeah.
Felix Diaz was one, and I think
just not big names.
Yeah, but
I'm talking about the big names.
Yeah, but that's the thing. But to do that, hard to do. And that's hard to do. And I'll give an example with a Top Rank and a PBC. Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 2, right? The amount of money that they both wanted for that fight, the amount of money that it took in order to promote that fight, and then after the fight took place in February of 2020, how much people or how many people actually bought the pay-per-view. It had the numbers. It had some good numbers, but it wasn't big enough for them to basically make money all across the board, So unless if you have something like the level of a Mayweather Pacquiao, where it's like, you know what, it really doesn't matter. We're going to make money regardless of how much money either one of these parties make. We're still going to make money regardless. You're not going to have those cross-promotional fights. It's just not going to happen.
And look how long it took, even to the point where the CEO of Showtime had to step in and say, either make this fight or all y'all fired. I mean, you had to go that far to make that darn fight happen. And keep in mind, too, Tim Bradley was ready to leave Top Rank because he thought he was going to get the fight with Mayweather. He spoke on that twice. And for whatever reason, they didn't do it. Tim wisely stayed where he was and got the Pacquiao fight instead. So the machinations that happen behind the scenes also dictates the fights we actually see. And 5 years to make the Pacquiao Mayweather fight, I mean, everybody was getting fed up, and so you can imagine, just like we was real fed up with what happened just for a year between Bud and Spence, we went through 5 years of that with Pacquiao and Mayweather.
Yeah, that fight should have happened probably right before he got knocked out by
Marquez.
Yeah. Hey, can I address something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
And from last week, I really wanted to jump on and talk about it, but there was some other things going on. But I want to say this without taking 5 years, because there's a lot of stuff that happened. But like you said, Greg, Terrence Crawford has been able to position himself to make the money in boxing some way, somehow. I applaud him for that, and I think it's timely. But making money and having a resume, or I guess you'll say, I don't know how to say it, but to have the resume, or to have once these boxers hang up the gloves, they do want to have something to say that they made their mark in the sport.
Yep.
I don't care how much money you made. Mayweather can say whatever he wants to say about money over the belts, but Mayweather has made his mark already in the sport. So he could say whatever he wants to say. But Terrence Crawford's been able to make the money, and I think once he hangs up the gloves, he's going to be a Hall of Famer because, first of all, he's undisputed in 2 different weight classes. He has a Hall of Fame career, but the resume doesn't quite add up. But from the business perspective, I'm gonna tell you, Crawford honestly has been brilliant. And the reason why is because it was timing for him. And the reason why he signed that second time, and Bob Arum said it, but he's not gonna tell you the whole story. If y'all remember, Terrence Crawford signed the second time with Top Rank right at the cusp of when HBO was falling off and they were trying to bridge the gap with ESPN. That is the reason why Terrence Crawford was able to get the guarantees. Bob Arum was promising stuff and he gave it to him. That's why Bob Arum said, yeah, I could have built a mansion, whatever, you know, but he not going to tell you. Bob Arum is very educated, Harvard educated lawyer, and has become a businessman in the sport from years. This joker been promoting fights since in Ali era. He's not in the business of losing money. So that was an investment. It was a part of his investment to have the names for ESPN to welcome him into their stable. So that's why he was giving Crawford those guarantees. Crawford was the recipient of that, and he was promised some things, and I believe that's why he's a little bit upset. I believe he was promised, and he said this before minimal times. He didn't really make a big thing about it, but he was promised Manny Pacquiao. But Bob Arum has been on record saying that he kept Manny Pacquiao from Terrence Crawford. So he was promised the money. He was promised the legacy fight. He didn't get the legacy fight, but he got the money. But that's why he's been brilliant as a businessman. But as far as his legacy, Top Rank never had a stable that could give Terrence Crawford the type of legacy that he was looking for. But Bob Arum, being the brilliant businessman that he is, and he's brilliant in the sport of boxing, he can take your career to a place. He's done it for Mayweather. He's done it for the Golden Boy. He can take your career to a place. After that, it's up to you. He promised Terrence Crawford that legacy fight. He never gave it to him. Manny Pacquiao eluded him. But I think the mistake that Crawford made with signing that second time was something that I always remember in boxing. I remember when Mayweather told Pacquiao, he said, before they fought, I don't know how many of y'all was following series back then. He said, in order to get this fight, you gonna have to sign with the PBC. I was like, that's ridiculous. Why would he have to sign with the PBC? Now you see, Manny Pacquiao signed with the PBC. Manny Pacquiao still have fighters that are fighting on the PBC right now. If y'all ain't know that.
But
This
you
is
know,
the
Manny
thing. If
history.
listen,
Sorry.
if Crawford would have signed, he just didn't have the vision. If he would have signed with the PBC instead of signing with with Top Rank again, he probably could have got the Manny Pacquiao fight. Because Manny Pacquiao ended up signing to the PBC. You see, Keith Thurman got that fight.
No.
Thurman got that fight.
No. Listen. You know what? I like what you're saying, but my thing is this. You see, if you want to work with me, TBE, you're gonna have to do what you gotta do. And listen, you know what? I like Terrence Crawford. You know, Terrence Crawford. You know what? He's a hell of a fighter, but he don't make smart investments. You know? And I'll give it to him. You know what? He gonna lead the game with all his faculties, but he don't make smart investments. You know what I mean? So, you know what? He could continue his career. He could think that he could, you know, go after Canelo. But you know what? I cooked Canelo. I already cooked Canelo. So you know what? He's easy work. Okay. Now, as far as his legacy is concerned, he don't have as many Hall of Fame fighters like me. You know, I beat about 55-11 world champions. So
He
he
did.
can't have my legacy. And you know, when I got into the Hall of Fame, you know, and all those people that were inducted into the Hall of Fame, you know, like Sugar Shane Mosley, like Miguel Cotto, like Juan Manuel Marquez, they were all part of the same class. I beat all of them. No, I'm just playing.
Great impersonation. All right, guys. So we are almost at the 2.5 hour mark. Unfortunately, I got to get ready to take some hungry young ladies to dinner tonight as we wrap up this summer for them. Like they about to fall off these stairs, they're gonna stop playing. But appreciate y'all for joining us on the Friday evening rant.
Great live.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good to
Yep.
see you,
Great
Spence.
conversation, and to the point that Gregory Q made, we can come on here, we can talk, and we can disagree. We can have great conversations, and you don't have to be. I don't know why it is. Boxing fans are almost like Democrats and Republicans sometimes, man. Like they hate each other.
Yeah.
It's really not that. It's not that serious, man. So I appreciate everybody that joined the panel. Of course, we'll be back Sunday. I'll still be here on location Sunday, but Jason will be joining me. We'll run off our topics. We'll still have the panel join us, people join us as we go through the numerous topics that we're going to cover. So make sure you join us this Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, guys, peace.
Peace. Y'all have a good weekend.
Y'all have a good one.